Hello. Hello, welcome to another video. As you can tell by today's title, we're doing an April reading wrap up, but honestly just all of the books I've read so far this year, just because I haven't talked about, I think, a good portion of any of the books I've read. First, I'm going to grab them off the shelf because I think it's the most fun thing to do, so let's do that. All right, let's get a little up close and personal. I think we're gonna go ahead and do this from chronological order, just like what I started this year with, and then work our way to what was my most recent read. I think that makes the most sense. Also, a good portion of the books I started the year off with were ebooks, so I don't have like the physical copy, obviously, so I'll probably put up a picture like in this corner of what they were. But now I need to figure out the order of the books. I actually really can't remember. All right, we're cooking. I am gonna refer to my Goodreads because I don't really remember. Let's see if I can show the stack. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, look at that. Look at those tabs. Aren't they cute? Anyhow, let's just get into this. It's gonna be a long one, so like I said, grab your drink. It's like, is there water in that? Is it juice? Is it Coke? I started January off pretty slow. I couldn't decide what I wanted to read, and I had started reading one book and I got like maybe at least 100 pages in, where I only had like maybe 50 pages left, and I just really wasn't vibing with it anymore, and I decided that this was no longer the year of forcing myself to finish books that I just don't want to finish at the time. So I put it down, and so I had to scramble for the rest of January to hurry up and finish books because it was getting like halfway through the month already. I finally picked up this one that I've had for a while by Gloria Steinem. It's called The Truth Will Set You Free, but First It'll Piss You Off. This is pretty much just a collection of her favorite quotes from people that she's come across in life that are relating to relationships, love, and rebellion. If you don't know, Gloria Steinem is one of the forefront women for the feminist movement. If you haven't read this, I definitely recommend. It was very fun. It's also a very short book, as you can tell, and it's even shorter because a lot of it looks like this. Like, you know, it's not a novel, and so it's just a lot of quotes being pulled and then short essays written about those quotes and how she views the world that we live in now, and just really inspiring and uplifting content in this one. So I definitely recommend it. I think I gave it about 4 stars just because it wasn't what I thought it was. I definitely thought it was going to be more heavily written and less like short story, essay, collection of quotes kind of thing. There's also a lot of illustrations in this, so I thought it was going to be something different, and I think that's why I gave it a lower star, but I read it very quickly. It was a one-day read. This is where things get a little shoddy. I'm going to use my my phone, and hopefully this doesn't mess up the sound, but it probably will. Oh, okay, yes. Okay, so also in January, I finished reading a book called Assembly by Natasha Brown, which is about a Black woman who is working kind of a job that she doesn't really love in London, and she's dating a white man, and they're planning to go back to his family's estate for the weekend to celebrate, I believe, a wedding, but also she's kind of dealing with figuring out if she has like a terminal illness, and she doesn't want to tell anyone about it. So the book is actually very well written, and it was kind of hard to just stay with the story and have to continuously break down the sentences. So I feel like it was trying to be a little pretentious, if I'm not lying. It was a little up its own nose. I still really loved the ending, and I still really loved the story overall, and there were some really good points in the story that I did enjoy. So for that reason, I gave it 4 stars. And it's also a very short book, and it's written by a woman of color, so naturally I have to just love the book. But like I said, the writing is a bit tougher to get through, but I still really enjoyed it. And if it's something that you're into, I think if you've read like Queenie or Such a Fun Age, I definitely recommend reading Assembly. It's kind of along the same lines, but a little more highbrow. If you're looking for a book that's a little more literature based, that's definitely a good pick for you. Then I believe after I read those 2 books, I read 2 novellas that are a part of the same series by Denise Williams. It's a part of her Airport novella series. The 3rd book I read was The Misconnection by Denise Williams. It was a short novella. I also checked it out in my local library Libby app. It was really good. I liked it. It's basically all of the books pretty much have the exact same plot. It's girl meets boy in airport. They fall in love. They don't tell each other, and then when they do tell each other, it's a little too late and something happens. It's a very formulaic story, as you can can expect for most novellas to be, but I actually really enjoyed it. They were sweet, they were quick, and they were cute. I read that one, The Misconnection, and also The Sweetest Connection, and I believe there's 3 in the series, and I think I've read all 3, but I read the first one last year. I enjoyed them. There's not much to say about them because they are just novellas. I do like how they're kind of all in the same universe as her actual books, because some of the characters, the side characters that you meet in her other 2 books, How to Fail at Flirting and The Fastest Way to Fall, do show up in these novellas. So that's always fun. I love a universe. Okay, so those are all of the ebooks I read in January. I think I said this already, but I did start a book called Happy Hour by Marlo Granados, and I was really enjoying it. It was more of a story about 2 best friends who are, I believe, from Europe that spend their summer in New York. And I was really liking it, but it was taking me a really long time because it's one of those stories that are less plot driven and more character focused. And I do love those kind of stories, but at the time I was needing something a lot quicker and something to grip to, like, you know, really get me into the mood to read, and that one was really kind of taking me out of it. So naturally I had to just go ahead and pick up A Court of Wings and Ruins, and I flew through it. I flew through it in maybe like a week, I think, which is a very fast reading time for me, especially with a book that's this thick, which I think is so crazy because I remember like last year I was like, I don't read books that are over 400 pages. I just don't do it. And then look at me now. I'm pretty sure this book is like 700 pages. It's 699 pages. So that's growth if you ask me. If you don't know what this book is, it's the 3rd book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J Maas, and this one is just so action-packed. What I love most about this book series in particular is that Sarah does a very good job at showing how characters are developing after they've gone through a traumatic experience, and not only showing how they develop, but showing how each different character develops differently. If you've read the series, you know it's following Feyre as she's coming to terms with being taken to a new world. I don't want to spoil too much because, like I said, this is the 3rd book in the series. She has 2 other sisters, Nesta and Elaine, and they're all going through stuff, and it's just so good to see how they each are handling it differently. This is also a very good found family trope book as well, so if you haven't started the ACOTAR series, I 100% recommend it because it's very fun, and it's also my first fantasy series that I've ever read, and it's just like, it really set the bar. Okay, I know like a lot of people who are really into fantasy are like, Scotland, that's a really low bar, but it's like, as someone who didn't read fantasy before and has just been introduced into the entire genre by this book, and it's made me want to read more fantasy, I think we should all be happy for that alone, that more people are being introduced to the fantasy genre. So this is a very good starting point for you. It has a good mix of world building, character development, and just ease of reading, honestly. But also, with that being said, the writing isn't great, I can give you that much, but it's still a fun read, and so for that alone, I think I gave it maybe 4.5 stars. It was fun. It was fun as hell, and I did cry at the end, so. Okay, let me adjust the way I'm sitting because my legs are going numb. After that, I read Mr. Salary by Sally Rooney. If you've known me long enough, you know I freaking love Sally Rooney. I love her writing so much, and I know it's not for everyone because of the quotation marks. And honestly, if you're not a fan of miscommunication tropes, then I definitely don't think you'll enjoy Sally Rooney because that's pretty much what all of her books are. It's just miscommunication, and I think that's also why it's so fun to see that she doesn't write with quotation marks, because I think it adds to the entire point of the story is a miscommunication. It's very hard to track who's talking in the dialogue parts. That being said, I read Mr. Salary. I think it was probably I think it came out maybe before or after Normal People. It's a story about a young woman who is going to live with a family friend who's much older than her, and they kind of have like this weird dynamic where they're like, will they, won't they? And she's really into him, but he's kind of more reserved, as most of Sally Rooney's male characters are. And she's going to go stay with him after being away for a long time in New York. She's going back to Dublin, I believe, to see her father, who is in the hospital at the time. And it's just more of those character relationships, dynamics that I think Sally does so incredibly well, is exploring more of these more difficult conversations that you have with people. I think a lot of times we have these conversations in our head that we're too scared to have with the person we want to have it with, and I think Sally does those conversations in the book so well. I'll just be reading one of her books and I'll be like, I have thought this so many times but have never said it to anyone, and here it is written in Word in a book. So I love her writing so much. I think it's very straight to the point. It's not as flowery, and I think for that reason it makes it way more fun to read. I'm more of a succinct and concise writer, so it makes it way more entertaining to read books that are also that way. After that, I did read A Court of Frost and Starlight, which I do think I have a vlog of me reading that on here, so I'll link it in the cards that I think will show up on this side, but I don't know if it doesn't. Oh well. I don't currently have the book with me because I also got my best friend into reading the series, and so she has it right now, and so I won't say too much about that one because I do have a whole video about me reading it and my thoughts on it, so go ahead, watch that one. But it was read this year. Guys, we're still in January because I went through like a crisis of being like, Scotland, please finish books, like you need to get ahead of your reading schedule. I did read Song of Achilles. I picked this one up kind of reluctantly because I didn't want to read it quite yet because I had just finished reading A Court of Frost and Starlight, and it was like January 27th, and I was like, okay, you've read enough books, like you don't need to rush, you just need to sit and marinate with the books you've read. But then said friend Aaliyah came over for a girls' night and we ended up reading all night, and I didn't have anything to read, so I just went ahead and picked this one up. But I'm very glad that I did. Like, I don't think I loved it as much as many people did on TikTok with like the whole sensation that's around it, but I did actually find the writing to be really beautiful. I did really like the story as well. I didn't know much about Achilles other than like the Achilles heel. I did really like it, and I believe his name is I can never say it, you guys. I can literally never say it. Petrol. I literally can't say it. Patroclus. I think his name is Patroclus. Oh, we don't know. This book is about Achilles and Patroclus, who are both Greek mythology based people, characters. It's a retelling of them, but it's more through Patroclus's point of view. Don't come for me, okay? I don't know how to say that. But it's a really beautifully written story. I think it's really beautiful how we get to see this story told from not like the Greek hero's point of view. It forces you to think more about who is the true hero in the story. I definitely recommend. I think it was really cute. I think I gave it probably 4.5 stars, maybe 4. I don't really remember. As you can tell, maybe not. I did tab it a lot, so clearly that means I enjoyed it some. So that is that one. I'm going to stop this clip because my SD card is going to be full. Give me a minute. And once again, legs are going numb, so we're gonna stop that. Now we are finally into February. I started off February with Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn, and it was probably my most anticipated book for the start of the new year. I was like, where is it? Fiending for it. I asked for it for Christmas, but my mom is really sick of me spending my money on books, so she didn't get it for me, but it's okay. I got other things. But I ended up going ahead and getting this book during the half price, not the half price, but during Barnes & Noble's start of the year sale that they have on hardcovers. I was looking forward to reading this book so much, and unfortunately, I just really didn't love it. I really didn't love it. Okay, it fell victim to the sequel curse. I just really, it didn't do it for me. This is the sequel to Legendborn, which is a Arthurian retelling about King Arthur in the Legends of Sion, or the Knights Round Table. I believe that's what it is. I loved the first one. I loved Legendborn. I got through it very quickly in about a week and a half, and I really liked it. So I was really looking forward to reconnecting with Bree and Sel and Nick and the whole gang for Bloodmarked. I found myself really mad at having to finish the book, if that makes sense, because at least the first 100 pages is just really going over what has happened in the first book and kind of just constantly regurgitating what we already know about the world. And I don't think any real new information is introduced until past the 100-page mark. Once we get to the 100-page mark with the new information, it's probably like another 50 to 100 pages before we get even more new information, and then we get introduced to new characters in probably like the third act of the book, and it just doesn't feel like a very succinct story, and it feels like it could have been maybe 100 pages shorter, if I'm being honest. And also Brie was acting out in this book. Like, I was like, girl, I get it, you're 16, you're new to the world, but like, these people are trying to help you. I really need you to chill out and be helped, okay? Like, just chill out. Now, obviously, I did enjoy the book some. I did tab it, so I'm not gonna be like it was the worst book I've ever read, but unfortunately I do think I have to give it 3.5 stars just because, like I said, it was very difficult to read because it was so repetitive, and a lot of the people that were introduced in the story are kind of like introduced as, like, they're introduced in like very minimal ways, but yet they're supposed to have a big impact to the story. And then at the end of it, it kind of feels so rushed, or like the last 50 pages, I'm like, where are we? What's happening? What's going on? And then it's over. For that reason alone, I was kind of upset with the book. And I think it's also because I hyped it up so much myself that I should have just kept the expectations kind of minimum, which is why I think I liked Legendborn so much, is because I kept expectations pretty low for that book. I didn't really have any. I did give it 3.5. It wasn't the worst book I've ever read, but I did have higher hopes for it that weren't met. My battery's dying now, so let's change the battery. After I read Bloodmarked, I kind of went into a bit of a reading slump because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to read next, and I had a whole TBR for February that I just really wasn't vibing with anymore after that, just because I was so let down by Bloodmarked. I'm being like so hard on the book. It honestly was not horrible, you guys. Like, the book is actually very good. It was interesting at part. There were some really good quotes in there, so I did like the book. It just, it had its downfalls as well. So if you're asking me to recommend the book to you, I would recommend reading the entire series. It's still very good. It's transformative for Black women, Black girls, and for that reason alone it should be read. But there are, as if for pretty much any book, some of its down points and flaws. That was my redeeming point for Bloodmarked. After I read that, I wasn't sure what I wanted to read next. I tried reading 7 Days in June, wasn't feeling it. I tried reading Ace of Spades, wasn't feeling it either. Tried reading Wahala, also was not into it. So eventually I was like, I just need a short book that I know I can get through pretty quickly, because also the month was coming to an end, and I try to read 2 to 3 books a month, but I had only read 1 at the time. I went ahead and picked up Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed, and I'm very happy that I picked up this book. I loved it. I think I gave it 5 stars. This book is about a 24-year-old woman, Black woman, who is a nanny for a white family in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and one night after going to a friend's birthday party, she gets a call from her employer asking her to come pick up the child that she nannies because something has happened at their house and they want to get her out of the house for just a couple of hours. And it's about midnight, I think. So Amira picks up the girl, which I believe her name is, I actually really don't remember what the child's name is in this book. The little girl's name is Briar. There we go. So Amira picks up Briar and takes her to the grocery store, and while she's there, she is racially profiled. It becomes this whole thing, and someone there is recording it for her. And so basically the entire story is about her coming to terms with this happening to her, but continuing to nanny for the family. And then also, I think what is the best part of this story is that homegirl Amira is just looking for health insurance. Like, she really is like, I'm turning 25 in a couple of months. I'm working a dead-end job that doesn't pay me enough, and I'm going to be kicked off of my parents' health insurance soon, and I just need it. And I think that is why this book is such a 5-star read for me, because it's like constantly for people who are people of color, we're fighting for like the most basic thing we need, and the people who are trying to help us are actually constantly standing in the way. So this book is definitely a book that touches on the white savior complex, but it's also just a fun read. I have read some of the reviews saying that people didn't really enjoy this book because of the colloquialism and the slang that's used in this book between Amira and her other Black friends, but I think that is just a mute point because it's to say that Black people only speak one way, which is your way, which I just don't think is true. There's a plethora of Black people or people of color all around the world who speak differently, and I think if this is not how you speak, that's completely fine, but somewhere in the world people speak like this. So that's why I love this book so much. I definitely think it's a very important read for anyone of any color, and I think it's informative, it's fun, it's fresh, and it's not like hard-hitting. It's very funny. I did laugh at a lot of the points of this book, and I didn't annotate it as I was reading it the first time because I did binge read it in like a day, but I do want to go back and re-annotate the book because I think there are a lot of really good points to draw out in this book. So 5-star read for me. I loved it. I'll probably read it again. It's so short that I most likely will, and I definitely recommend it. That was February. That was 2 books. Moving into March, I had a big plan to read a lot of books. Actually, I only read books that are written by women, to be honest, but I wanted to read more books that were focused on specific female relationships and friendships. So I had a very, very big personal March TBR. I read 2 books. I read 2 books out of like the 7 books I had planned, and one of them wasn't even a book I had planned. So that is a mood reader for you. The first book I read was Adele, and also similar, I just literally don't know how to talk. This is why these videos are so hard for me to film. The same thing that happened in January happened to me again in March, where I was reading one book that was actually fairly short. It was only about 100 and maybe 50 pages, and I read the first 100 pages and I just wasn't vibing with it, and that was Mona. And I think I have a video of me reading that book as well, so I won't say too much about it. I just wasn't vibing with it. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I think it was just a book that I think I said in the video as well. It's a book written for authors or like very big bibliophiles who just are like really into the classics, which is just not me. So I had a very hard time reading it. The words were big. I didn't really understand where the story was going, and it was kind of very difficult for me to get through, and I was like, you know what? No. I'm done reading this for now. I'm going to try to pick up something else, read something else, and see where that takes me. So I did read a little bit of Magnolia Parks. I enjoyed it, but also it wasn't what I was looking for. I was wanting something that was more literary fiction, but not as hard as Mona to read. And so I did end up finding Adele at Half Price Books for about $2 randomly on one day. I had no idea what this book was about. I just liked the cover. It made me feel like a smart girly having it because it is, I think, Penguin. This book is about Adele, who is a married woman with a child living in Paris, and she's having so many affairs and she just cannot like stop herself. She's just pretty much, it's borderline a sex addiction. And so we go across like her having this big secret to keep from her family, keep from her husband, and she has a friend that she's not really friendly to but constantly uses as an excuse to have these affairs. Eventually the husband does find out. It's basically about what the relationship turns into after this big secret is revealed. And like I said, it's a very short book. It's very easy to read. I think the thing that I liked the most about this book is that we're never quite told why she has like this incessant need to constantly feel desired through sex. We're introduced to her mother at some point, and we're also introduced to her father at another, I believe, and it's just never explicitly said why she has this. And I think that is a very good explanation for a lot of the issues we face in life, that sometimes we just don't know where they come from, where they stem from, and then why they're manifesting this way. And sometimes we just never learn. We just never know why that's happening, and if we do, we don't learn it at this stage in life. We take years to learn it. So I think this is why I like this book so much, because it doesn't end on such a resolved note. It is kind of open-ended ending. If you're looking for kind of a more literary fiction book, a little more vague in the plot, character-driven book, I definitely recommend this one. Like I said, it's very short and very easy to get through. I do think I want to say I gave it like 3 stars because while I enjoyed it, it didn't change my life in any kind of way, and I didn't not like reading it, so it was like a fair 3 stars. My foot is still going numb, y'all. This book right here saved me. It saved me, it renewed me, it rejuvenated me, it did everything that you could think that a book could do. I loved this book. This book is a 5-star read for me. And if you haven't read it, it's Acts of Desperation by Megan Nolan. It's her debut novel, and it's about a girl who is kind of obsessed with this man that she meets randomly at a art gallery, and briefly become like love bombing. It's a love bomb. He loves her, he's in love with her, he's all over her, and then abruptly just rejects her and is like bye, and like just leaves, and she's like what the hell, and then he comes back. So it is an on and off again relationship, and basically how she gives up so much of herself to be with this man and what that looks like, and kind of exploring more of those kind of relationships are borderline toxic. The most magical part about this book is that the main character who we're following is never named. She is never ever named. We never learn her name. And every man that she comes across with, we know like his entire name, his background, his profession, his occupation, what he does on the day in and day out, what he loves, what he reads. We know everything about that man. That is why I love more of these literary fiction books sometimes, is because they're using not only like the story and the plot and the characters to build a story, but also using like specific writing devices to also build the story. And that is why I loved this book so much. It's just so creative. Also, it's a lot of life lessons in this book. I have one specific quote in this book that will never leave me, and it happens towards the end of the book, and basically this man is like asking her to have sex with him, and she's like, no, I'm not doing that, I don't want to. And he's like, why not, come on, like why not, let's just do it. And she says, "Feeling is cowardly and violent." And it laid me out, y'all. It really laid me out, because I think that it's such a short but very profound sentence, that wheedling is cowardly. It's so cowardly, and it's very violent, because at some point after you keep saying why, it becomes very scary for me to continue to say no. And it's like a very violent way of being like, why are you saying no to me? You know? So it's so good. I 100% recommend this book. It's a 5-star read for me. Even though it is a literary fiction book, it is fairly easy still to get through, and it's also very short. And the chapters are very short. They're very short. After reading that, I was like, you know what? It's finally time. It's time. I don't know why I'm scared to read this book, because what if I don't like it? But I was in the mood to continue with my literary fiction, like kind of romance, but not really romance genre. So I picked up Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney, and once again, 5-star read for me. 5-star read between me and Sally. Like, she never disappoints me. This book follows two best friends who are living long distance away from each other, and how they are just emailing back and forth about things that are happening in their lives and their relationships and their work life, and how at the end they finally come together to sort out any of the issues that they've had. It's just so good. Okay, I tapped this one so incredibly much. I don't know if you'll be able to tell. There we go. Like, I tapped it a lot. I tapped it a lot. And I wrote in it a lot because I just think it's such a good book. What I love most about Sally Rooney is that, sure, her characters are kind of similar throughout all of her books, but they do still have their very own distinct differences. Even between the characters in this book, we're following 4 main characters. Like I said, 2 best friends who are girls, and their 2 love interests. I don't want to spoil it. That's why I find it very hard to give synopsis for books, because I feel like synopsis sometimes spoil. Sally just honestly writes for the people who constantly have existential crises, and for that, I love her. And if you're coming to me to ask any book that I will ever recommend you, it will always be a Sally Rooney book. Okay, we're almost done. I need water. My mouth is so dry. My straw tastes like lip gloss. Okay, rounding us out, the last book I read in April was Night Shift by Kiara Ladner. This is also a book set in Europe, and I believe it's set in London, and it's about a woman who I think is about 24 years old, doesn't quite know what she wants to do with her life, but becomes weirdly obsessed with a woman that she meets at work, and then that woman leaves the job that they're working at together. It takes on this night shift job where they work, I think, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, working from like 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. and it's just so weird to me. I think I gave this book probably 2.5, 3 stars because it just doesn't make any sense to me why this woman would do that. It happens in like the first 20 pages where she just becomes very obsessed with this woman. And it's different because if we are introduced a bit more to our main character whose name is Maggie, and then we get to know a bit more about Maggie, and then we learn why she's obsessed with this woman, it would make more sense. It would give me like maybe another star to give it, but we don't get that. We're thrown into the story and Maggie's like, I'm obsessed with this woman, I want everything to do with her, I think I'm a lesbian now, and oh no I'm not, but like I still love her. And then we're like, why are you doing all of this? And so for that reason alone, I don't have much to say about this book. I didn't really like it. It is a 2.5 star for me, and that's okay. It's not that I don't recommend it, but I do recommend you making that decision for yourself whether or not you want to read this. I just didn't love it. Oh yeah, I think also in March I read another Sally Rooney short story online called Light and Color. I don't know, I'll put it here, whatever it's called, but it is a short story. And that one, I didn't love as much, but just because it didn't seem like a lot was happening in that one, I didn't hate it. I still gave it about 4 stars, but it's basically just, I don't know, it's honestly just another exploration between class and romance, which is pretty much what all of Sally Rooney's books are about. I enjoyed it, I read it, I thought I would talk about it, even though I didn't say much about it, but I read that one. And then finally we're to April now. Actually, I think I read all of those in April. I think I literally just lied to you. Yeah, sorry. These 2 books I read in April. So I did read this one first in April, and then I read this one in April, and then the last book I've read in April is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I did finally start the series and I really like it. If you don't know what this book is about, because it is also a show on Netflix, it's about Alina, who learns she has these special powers she didn't know that she had for a very long time, but powers that are so special apparently that she could save the entire world, and basically her coming to terms with how she's going to do that and who's going to help her, and then having to realign some of the people that she thought were friends who aren't actually friends. So I really like this book. I know not a lot of people love Shadow and Bone trilogy, and a lot of people just get straight to Six of Crows, but I'm the kind of person who needs to know like the full outline. Like I need to see the full universe, so I did go ahead and start with this one. And also I found it for very cheap. I found this book for like I think maybe $5.50, and so I found all of them brand new at Half Price Books for $5.50. I was like, yeah, for that reason alone, I'll start the series, sure. So I won't say too much about this one too, because I am doing a reading vlog of me reading all 3 of the books. Now it will take me a very long time to finish all 3 of the books because I'm not a fast reader and I do work, so that one may be a little delayed on the posting schedule, but it's coming, don't worry, it's coming. You guys, we did it. We did it. So those were all of the books that I've read so far this year, and now I want to know what you've read so far this year. Actually, that would be probably a long list for people, so tell me what your favorite book that you've read so far this year. Hello, quick inserting myself here. I'm editing and I just realized that my outro got cut off. So all I was saying was, let me know what your favorite book that you've read so far this year has been in the comments down below, and I hope that you all enjoyed the video and continue reading. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe, it helps a ton, and let me know what kind of videos you want to see, because I don't know if I want to lean more lifestyle or lean more books, but it'll probably be both of them because I enjoy both things. But I hope you have a really good rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one.